My name is Daniel Casper. I've always been kind of drawn to physical extremes. The most extreme possibility. Firefighting requires being really intentional and non-complacent and ready for that moment that might only happen once a year. I believe in being ready for that most intense moment. To do that requires really focused and intentional decisions every day. A really good bike racer is like a really savvy card player. Usually you can't tell when they're suffering. You have to really be willing to train at a high level and a lot. Learning how to kind of be married to your machine. I just don't believe that you can craft meaning without effort. And so if you're asking me, what's hard work about? It's about making your life meaningful.
Welcome, everybody, to the Cycling for Life podcast. My name is Mike Stensrud. I'm the host of this podcast. And the video you just saw, and the person in that video is a good friend and the guest of our podcast today, Mr. Dan Casper. Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Mike.
I love that video. I think you said it was done in your firehouse there. I think that is so cool. But the other reason I wanted to show that is that if you ever wanted to become a state, national, or world champion, all you got to do is watch that video. It's simple as that. The focus, the intensity, the intentionality, the dedication, it's all there. Do you remember doing that video though?
Yeah, I do. I mean, we didn't do it when I was actually working, but it was in my station. I think I had just come off shift that morning. One of the things about, my job is I am lucky in that it, puts a premium on being in shape, and it actually is okay with you training while you work. It's a busy station. You have to fit in your training in between a lot of runs, but it's still an advantage to have a job like that.
How long have you been a firefighter?
I'm in my 23rd year.
23rd year. And you are in Minneapolis. For those that don't know, you're in Minneapolis, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, so a lot of people know who you are, but a lot of people watching this podcast may not know who Dan Casper is. So I think the best way to do this is to list off some of your accomplishments. Here's what you've done on the track. So you've amassed 15 world titles, world record holder in the 2K, right, for the 50 plus.
For a period of time. Not anymore, but for a little bit, for a couple of years. For a couple of years, you had the world record, right? Seriously. Okay, 2 world records in the team pursuit, right? Who was part of that? Tim Mulrooney, James Tainter, David Clipper. In another iteration, we had Chris Carlson in there as a Texan.
You're the current world best in the 4K, so figure out what's a 4K. How many miles is that? A couple miles, right?
2.5 miles. Call it 2.5.
So is that from like a standing start? Like, how do they measure that? How fast? I mean,
all the pursuits, you have to start from standing start, yeah.
Flat out. And then you just got to be in one fixed gear and go as fast as you can for 4K. 40 national and state championships as well. So there's just a ton there on the track. So you have a large accomplishment on the track. We'll talk more about that. On the road. So this is just at the national level. You've got 5 national time trial championships. 2 of them you got silver medals. So in 7 years, you've either won or gotten second place. You kind of dominate the time trial, and you're on a consecutive streak. Are you not? Right now?
I think I've been going for the last 7 years, and I think I am on a consecutive streak. Let's see, maybe 3 or 4 in a row right now.
Yeah, there's some pressure. We're going to talk about mindset, how you deal with that versus the average Joe. You also won a gold medal in one of those national crits, 3 other podium finishes at the nationals, and numerous, I can't even count them, state championships. So that would include time trials, criteriums, road races, and then just about anything local in the regional area of Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin. I know we just had the lacrosse Omnium. I know you've won that before, but pretty much everywhere you go, you're standing on the podium, if not on the top step. So and I've been at some of those. I've been lucky enough to either see them or be in the same race with you and witness some of those victories too. And then in college, the last thing here, this probably tells you where all your aerobic engine came from, but you were a national champion in the 1500. For Division III and a 10-time All-American in the 800 and 1500, an inductee into your college Hall of Fame. And the name of your college was?
Carleton.
Carleton in beautiful
Northfield. Yeah.
Oh, it's the best place. I just read that. How's that make you feel?
I like to compete. I like competition. I like pushing myself physically. So it's kind of a natural, I guess it's just an offshoot of doing that. So I think whether I had done that well or not, I don't think that would have changed the way I would have conducted myself. I probably would have still been kind of drawn to pushing myself physically and challenging myself, seeing what I could do.
But there has to be some part of that, kind of this confidence, like, you know, you kind of ascend from, hey, I'm pretty good in my own neighborhood. And then I become pretty good in my own state. I go and I win a state title. And then you go and you dip your toe into a national kind of contest, and then you find out, wow. And then eventually you go to the world stage and not only compete but win there.
There have been definitely times where I've been like, okay, that was pretty good. Like that, and I feel more like almost surprised.
Can you remember one event or a couple events like that happened? Like, man, when I did this, that kind of was the turning point. Do you have an event or like a happening?
The Tour of America's Dairyland a couple of years ago, I showed up for a criterium and was able to just kind of ride away. And it really surprised me. And it made me realize that it kind of affirms that the way you're training is actually working. And then I think there have been a couple times at nationals on the road where the time trial course looked like it was going to be a little too hefty for the bike I ride, because I always choose, maybe just because I'm a trackie at heart, I choose a fixie for time trialing on the road with just a front brake. And you have to ride a fairly large gear to be competitive. And so I think maybe doing as well as I did a couple of years ago in Albuquerque on a tough course with a pretty good long climb in it, to be able to kind of do well, not just against my own age group, but also against the age groups around me. That definitely surprised me. Maybe doing as well as I did a couple of years ago in Albuquerque on a tough course with a pretty good long climb in it, to be able to kind of do well, not just against my own age group, but also against the age groups around me. That definitely surprised me.
Yeah, and because I was out there, and that was my first introduction into, my ascension into, let's try a national event, right? Like, okay. Mm-hmm. And what I found out, and you probably you found this out true, that the good thing is there's not a lot of guys left at 60 plus.
Yeah, no, it's attrition.
The guys that are left, man, they're good. But I do remember that course, and I do remember it was at the end. You turn around, you got to come up this mile or mile and a half climb, and it's like that is really hard and to keep that speed. And I know what you averaged for that ride, which was incredible. And on a fixed bike?
Yeah, on a 60, it was a 64. I ended up going to the 6414 gear, really pretty big gear, pretty stout, because you had to be fast on the downhills too. You can't give too much away. So, but yeah, that climb back was kind of harrowing.
That's it. So I guess there'd be a lot of moments. And when I coach people too, there are always moments, and in my own career too, and everyone I know, there's usually moments where you just do something. There's always somebody like, oh my God, I was able to hang with, this person, this mentor. They don't know, but they've been kind of my hero in my mind for a long time. And my God, I finished a race with them, or, maybe I beat them, or you got closer. So all those little, they mean something.
I was thinking another real pressure cooker situation is the individual pursuit on the track. Because, you only you race against an opponent on the other side, but there's also a whole bunch of, like, when you're during the qualifying round, when you're qualifying for the gold or the bronze medal rides, you're if you're coming in having done well the year before, but maybe the level of competition's gone up, or you're got people aging into your age category, or you've aged up. But I remember situations where people start throwing down times kind of in the heats ahead of you. This is a few years back now, but I remember I realized, okay, it got down to me, and by the times that other guys had ridden, I was like, okay, just to qualify for the gold medal round, I have to ride a personal record, I have to PR. So that can be pretty daunting, because you're focused on just what your schedule is going to be and how you're going to implement, but then to just know that somebody has already thrown that time out there for you to have to get after, that can really challenge your ability to handle pressure and stress.
But that's what makes you a champion, right? Just going through that door. Most people, it's a privilege to compete, right? So they don't get a chance to feel that. Most of us, none of us will feel that at that level. Very few.
That's where you feel really good, because it's not really that you beat this other person. It's more that you stayed in the game. You kept your mind right, because you could feel the potential for your mind to betray you. You could, you could feel that kind of potential for your mind to want to create an excuse. And so, so to actually achieve in that moment, that feels really good, because not because, like I said, not because you rode fast, but because you didn't undercut yourself.
I remember when I was at that the national time trial, and I remember you leaving, and I was after you because I was an older age group, and just listening to your introduction, and people like, and Mr. Dan Casper from, Minnesota, listen to all your achievements. You haven't even left the gate yet. You haven't even come down the ramp, and the pressure is on. Now you got to win. And second place is not even, So having that kind of pressure versus, I remember for me, it was my first one. I'm like, hey, just stay on the bike, right? Don't fall over, don't look a fool. Mm-hmm. I still wanted to do my best, so I carried that with me, but nothing like, man, I gotta win a national championship today. Otherwise,
I know what you're talking about. I mean, when you're kind of lining up and you're getting ready, and it's already kind of focused, and there's that countdown every 30 seconds, and you're hearing that beep, beep, beep. And then they let you, that's those kind of auditory signals can kind of get your fight or flight going pretty good. But I will say this, like, if the announcer's talking about you, as soon as you ride down that ramp and it's a few pedal strokes and you get into your aero position, that all vanishes, for me at least.
I'm going to go back to that when you were doing the pursuit and just knowing, like, oh my God, just to be competitive, I can't just do it. I have to have my best effort, even to have a chance. So in that moment, what goes through your head? Are you thinking, man, maybe I'm over my head? I'm just throwing things out that might be in my head at that time. You know what? I'm here. I'm glad I'm here, but man, I don't know if I can do that. I mean, maybe I'm over my head in this world stuff. I'm pretty good nationally, but okay, maybe this is my limit. I would constantly think about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, do you remember what you were thinking? And like, did you just had to block it off?
You got to really recognize that you're in this remarkably privileged position to even do that. I mean, the fact that your life is allowing you to train that hard to afford a bike, to afford flying over, to afford you to that experience. I mean, that's just luck that you're even able to be there on the line at that moment. So it and at the same time too, like in the scheme of things, it's such a meaningless pursuit, right? I mean, it's really, I mean, in the scheme of things, this is you doing your thing, and ultimately it has no impact on the world other than upon you and maybe a couple of your competitors, right? I mean, if you bring your best and your competitors bring their best, that's gift giving. That's a good way of honoring each other. So, but beyond that though, it's really it's of no consequence.
I'm trying to feel this balance because you really have to have it. You, in one sense, you have to be able to go, hey, come on, I'm riding my bike, that, but I'm competing. I really want to do my best. So there's this balance of like, I'm trying to tell myself, chill out. I'm riding my bike around this track, big deal. I'll just go as fast. But in order to do that, there has to be some sense of purpose and urgency.
Yeah, it would be disingenuous of me to say that I'm not caring. I mean, you care. It's everything to you in that moment. You spent a year training for this. You did spend a lot of money and energy to get over to this place. So you have to kind of balance out. You got to kind of care and not care simultaneously. It's very hard. That's the other piece of it too. If you recognize, hey, I'm just lucky I'm alive and I'm here and I've been able to put the time and energy into something that I care about and I like, it would be kind of a silly waste to not just try to make the most of that.
I like to compete. I like to push myself. I'm just curious, but at the same time, I don't abuse my body like I would before. I listen to it, and I don't ride over X amount of hours in a week. I'm, the days of me like, hey, I think I'll ride 300 miles or doing something. I just don't. I just stay in my little lane. I do the same thing. And when I feel like I've overstretched, I just stop or I just recover. My body's done a lot of great things for me over my 60-some years, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to ruin it.
I do think at our age, I can recognize that you got to go. You have to be even more concerted with your hard days. I feel like they have to really count, and you have to really go hard. You can't but at the same time, countering that, you have to have some really easy days too.
Do you have a coach, or do you coach yourself, and do you have like a really regimented, interval session, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, all this stuff, or do you just do it more by feel and by just by doing it over the years? You kind of know your body.
I do think having a coach would be a good thing for me. I think I've shied away from it partly because I'm cheap, and partly because I do like figuring things out for myself. It's the same way I like that. I like the problem of giving yourself one gear in a time trial. To me, that's I like that challenge, and trying to solve the problem of how best to use that one gear. What should that one gear be? But but I do think also that one of the reasons I've kind of eschewed a coach up to this point is that my job, the schedule's such that I think it might. I just maybe wrongly have anticipated that it might drive a coach kind of crazy to try to set up a schedule for me and then have me saying, well, I didn't get enough sleep last night coming off of work. And so I tend to kind of work around my work schedule and work around my fatigue level. And so I'm more of a kind of go by feel at this point. I do have a general sense for the arc of a season, and in the past, I've maybe wanted to be really good. Let's say if I want to be good 3 times, a year, so maybe end of May, and then some July, and then in October again for track worlds. It's been it's taken me quite a few years, trial and error, to figure out that, every time I wanted to rebuild for another kind of peak, I personally, for me, I needed like a week off the bike, and I probably could have just taken an easy week, but instead I just got off the bike, got in the gym, really focused on my body care and just letting myself recharge, not just physically, but mentally too. And that's worked for me. And, prior to that, I would, if I didn't take those little breaks, I'd end up kind of getting stale and I wouldn't be able to achieve like 3 kind of points of greater ability. So,
Obviously figured out what your body does, how much rest you need, and when you need to perform at like nationals or big races, you're always there. But that in mind, you also had to deal with some setbacks too. I mean, some of your training is really intense, and when you train intense, stuff happens, right? You have injuries, and you're just coming back from, maybe you want to talk a little bit about that. But you were in an accident, and you got some shoulder issues, and you're still coming back as we speak.
Yeah, no, in fact, I had a tendinosis issue in my knee a couple of years ago too. So,
yeah.
Up to that point though, I would have said, biking's pretty friendly as long as you stay upright. Like, it's not like trying to run. I mean, I that's something I did for many, many years, and there's no way I can do that anymore. Yeah, so I got struck by a car. Speaking of not staying on your bike, and it was I like to say it was no fault of my own. I mean, I was riding in a bike lane in a well-marked area, but I wasn't. I was moving along pretty good, and car just turned in front of me, and I just blew out my shoulder, blew out my rotator cuff, had to have surgery. So the jury is still out. I lost a lot of training time this winter and have felt not quite all myself for whatever reasons, and it just takes time to come back from that kind of an injury that really is an insult to your whole system like that.
Is it harder at 57 than it was at 37? Just
Yes.
mentally and physically just coming back? In what ways?
I think it's more physical. It's more physical. I think this could be, totally untrue, but I like to think that the pursuit of, kind of athletic achievement and the training we do and that I do has got some link to potential longevity, So it's like, so sometimes I like to think of the training I'm doing as kind of keeping me alive a little longer. And so there's something kind of desperate feeling. There's a certain desperate feeling I felt when I was kind of laid up, because it just makes you feel vulnerable and you're not able to train at the level that makes you feel like you're protecting yourself from aging. And so I guess I like to think of training as anti-aging. It's kind of almost like an anti-aging medication or something like that.
You wouldn't be alone. And that is, and I watch a lot of podcasts. That's why I'm doing one now, because I love learning. And right now, if you look anywhere, movement is the biggest thing. Just getting out and moving. We're not supposed to be sitting in our chairs all day long. And it doesn't mean even training, what you and I would call training. Just getting up and walking, just daily, just has a lot to do with just your health, your lifespan, and everything else. So now the jury's out as how much is enough, right? And how much is too much.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Like, are we burning the candle so hard that we end up with cardiac issues? Who knows? There's all sorts of things that you can do to yourself too by going, too intensely. And,
yeah, right.
But yeah, I don't know. I've taken some solace in the process of getting better and recovering from friends of mine who know exercise phys, who say, listen, are you losing, fitness right now? Of course, but your body adapts and then it comes back potentially stronger. So maybe, who knows, maybe you benefit from this kind of experience. Maybe you come back stronger than you ever have been before. It just takes time though. And jury's always out until that moment we talked about earlier where you're like, huh, wow, all right, I guess all that training did work.
Yeah, usually my best times are when I'm forced to rest, maybe a dental issue or like I have to take 4 days off and I didn't want to. And then it turns out being a good thing, right? So yeah. I would always lean on towards resting more, not working more. I always do that now.
Like when I stop working in this job, I do have designs on probably trying some coaching, because I do think that's where a coach could really come in handy, kind of leading, being your thinking for you and understanding when you're overstriving and when you're not incorporating the rest necessary. I would think that for me a good coach would be somebody who kind of cracked the whip pretty hard to get that intensity taken care of, but also pull the reins hard too.
I still coach a bit. And I think what I can offer people is that not so much the success, but all the stupid stuff I did over the years. I mean, nutrition and all the things I had to learn. And I can say, hey, I'll save you years or just, terrible situations and bonking and all that stuff that, back in the day we just didn't have. We went out for the joy of riding and rode too far. So that's it. So where are you at right now?
I think if my body allows me to, I probably will always want to kind of try to compete at a high level and to push myself and to get the most out of myself. I think that's always going to appeal to me, as long as my body allows, as long as my health allows. If some doctor said, hey, what you're doing is bad for your heart, or your heart has had enough and now you have to kind of curtail things or bring things back, I'd adapt. I'd figure out, I'd figure out a way to make life, there's a million things you can do, being alive, that, it'd be silly to, kind of mope too hard about that. But I think as long as I'm capable of it, for whatever reason, that's really what speaks to me. That's what I really like to do. I mean, when I'm at, track worlds, my favorite category is the 80 plus guys. They rip around and I'm like, that's aspirational to me. So now you're lucky if you get to 80 and you can do that. Most 80-year-olds can't. But as far as like where I'm at in terms of comeback, I think probably for this year for sure, I'm probably gonna kind of avoid risk as much as I can, or limit risk, and probably not race mass start stuff. I'll probably just time trial, which is really kind of the thing I love the most anyway. So, and it's not without risk, but it's, look at me. I just got hit by a car riding in a bike lane, on a training ride. So it can happen anywhere. And that's one of the really daunting things, is that, the older we get, the more we know so many people who have either been struck by cars, severely injured by cars, or killed by cars. And that's just a reality for being a road bike rider.
Let me ask about time trial. What makes most people don't like time trialing?
It probably has something to do with physiology. I think some of us, our physiology allows us to sustain effort more than it allows us, that quick burst. So there's probably a physiological element to it that makes us, kind of better, more capable of that sustained effort. And then therefore, because you're capable, it also, you tend to like the things you're better at, and so you might gravitate in that direction. I think that time trialing, particularly recently, has, as we've started to understand kind of the significant role that aerodynamics plays, it's become kind of a puzzle for people to play with. And I know people who have all the money in the world and they can really fully take advantage of all the, technology that's out there and the equipment changes. But I also know some, guys that they ride $1,500 bikes and they are all about just kind of tinkering with them and making adaptive changes to get just that little bit faster. So it's still just kind of it's this kind of little bit of a black hole to jump into, to get sucked into that you're just pursuing these marginal gains, I guess is the best way to describe it. And then I think the other piece of it too, though, is I did come from a running background, and really running, the drafting just not nearly as significant as it is in cycling. So I think running inherently is a time trial effort. You kind of, you learn to kind of, know your limits, know how to pace an effort, and
know how to suffer too. You know how to suffer a little bit in a controlled, like, okay, this is bad, but I can deal with it.
Yep. So maybe there's something about that too.
Yeah. And for those that don't know, just to get an idea how fast this guy goes regardless of time trial bike or not, but for a 40K, roughly what, 29 miles an hour?
I seem kind of stuck in that 29. Like if I can ever hit 30 miles an hour, I'm ecstatic. So, but I can often average like 29 and a half.
But for the average 57-year-old or any age, when you're hitting close to 29, 30 on a bike, just go out and try riding, and you'll see what kind of effort, and then do that for 50 minutes straight. Yes, the pros, the people are doing the world record holders. Yeah, those are few and far between. But just trying to go 25 miles an hour or above, it's just hard to do. So just want to put in that perspective of what you're capable of doing on two wheels. It's really, really cool. Well, we got a couple more minutes left here in this podcast, and I just wanted to kind of I know we've talked about an array of things, but any kind of, and you've said this before a little bit too, tips on staying healthy. I know this is a cycling podcast, but as we grow older, we all want to stay healthy and live a healthy life and good health span. So we're active and we can do the things that we want to do for as long as we can. You got any secrets in your lifetime in terms of, I don't care if it's health, diet, stretching, weightlifting, cycling? What's your mantra? What's your philosophy?
My philosophy is that you really should eat clean. So I think, for cycling in particular, I'd say, I know for me, it works to snack, healthy snacks and clean food. And so not a lot of processed food, not a lot of junk food for snacks. Just if you can eradicate that, for me, that was a big part of kind of getting to a competition weight that's not driven by counting calories or fixating on, losing weight or anything like that. So I basically, my body kind of comes to some kind of equilibrium between the training I'm doing and the eating I'm doing. And, of course, you got to be somewhat aware of the fact that, it's really all calories in, calories out. So, if you are taking an easy week, it probably behooves you to not eat quite as much volume wise. But
you talk about plant-based or fasting, any of those?
I'm entirely plant-based, and I have been for the last 14 years. And I think I recognized in me, at least, a significant gain in performance when I did that. I don't know if that's because that diet tends to be a little less calorically dense. And so therefore, maybe I just slimmed down in a way that I didn't even realize I could. That might be possible. But I guess maybe more so, I think what I took from that and what I've taken from my experience with food over the last, so many years is that food is fuel. And it matters what kind of fuel you put in your body. It really does. And believe me, when I was growing up, I wanted to discount that because it does require a little greater attention to detail to make sure that your diet is like that. So that would be what I'd say about food. And then as far as kind of like mantras, I try to be as consistent with my like whole body fitness is the other kind of mantra. It's especially for cyclists, because cyclists can kind of really start to think that the work they do on the bike is the work that matters, and it certainly does. But you need full body fitness to really get the most out of yourself and to prevent injury. And so I think what has worked for me over time is to continue to kind of research what other people are doing, either on YouTube or, videos. So I pretty much have like a daily regimen of strengthening. It can be as short as half an hour. It can be as long as 2 hours, and kind of depends on what I have that day time wise. But I kind of know if it's a half an hour where I'm going to chop things off. But I know what key components that I really feel like I want to put my body through daily, at least maybe say 5 times a week. And
what would those be? What are the ones that are just you're not gonna always do?
I remember a friend of mine saying, "Hey, listen, you should try this back exercise. It's foundational exercises. It's a Dr. Eric Goodman. He's talking about it. It takes like 12 minutes, a 12-minute demonstration. And I remember I watched that, and I think it's kind of like shopping for houses. You see enough of them, you know what you like when you see it. And so I'd been trying all sorts of things, and somebody told me they really like this for core and strength and for back strength. And I tried it once and I was hooked, and I just knew that I was going to probably take an adjustment of that. Over time, I've kind of focused on certain aspects of it more than others, but it's like this 12-minute hit that I do, and I try to do it every day. So, and I love TRX bands for core work because it's super efficient. It stresses the core in a way that, until I saw it done, and still until I got some, TRX bands to hang and put my feet into, I just hadn't really contemplated that. And that was a friend of mine. There's a local guy who really knows physiology and strength training. And I basically said, "Hey, can I come in and pay for you for 10 sessions? Can you show me all the things you do? And then the stuff that I really like, I'm probably going to ask you to go over it again with me until I really understand it. And then I'm going to incorporate it into my own routine."
So you do these every day for the most part, or variations? I mean, 5 days a week, 4 days a week? Are you doing core resistance training? How much?
If you don't do something every day for overall full body strength, suddenly a week goes by and you're like, or 2-3 days fly by and you're like, I didn't do anything. So it's got to be kind of baked in to the way you live your life. That's my philosophy on it.
No, I believe that totally. I totally believe that. And whatever routine you can sustain, just do it, and just do it every day.
Yeah,
you talk about consistency. You said it over and over.
Yeah, and the other piece is, I like it when you are engaged in figuring out what your routine is. I mean, it can be good to just somebody, like I said, I've stolen everything I do. I've stolen, and that's what it's all there for. But everything I do, I took directly from somebody else. I didn't make it up. I just took it directly from somebody else. I may have mixed and matched and pulled from here, pulled from there, but it's all from other sources. But I do think that it's important to be kind of engaged in what your routine is and figuring out what your routine is.
Well, I join you. I am a certified fitness thief myself. I'm grabbing, stealing anything I can, and if it fits my lifestyle, I'm trying to do it.
That's what YouTube's for. Isn't that what they're saying? The fact that all these young athletes are coming into the sport of cycling, and they're like 3-4 years ahead of where cyclists used to be. I think a lot of people attribute that to the fact that there are no secrets anymore.
It was thought that you, in the Tour de France back in my day, back in the 80s or 90s, you had to be probably 32, 33. Then you could be a Tour de France. You could think about being a champion. You had a window, maybe if you were 36, then you're too old. But you had to be over 30 because you had to have all those miles. Well, we see that's not true. I mean, you're seeing guys coming in there 22, 21. I mean, just crushing. So it's kind of good for that. Anything else? We've talked about diet. We talked about strength. We talked about being, doing something every day.
Making it your own, too.
Whatever that means, right? Because people have different lifestyles, and it doesn't mean I got to go to the gym for an hour or I got to do this. No. Okay.
Could mean you're getting your 15 minutes in every day. I'd rather see you do 15 minutes of really basic, core work every day than go to the gym for 2 hours once or twice a week. Personally, that's my philosophy. Maybe you jump rope. And that's the other piece. This is something I would like to add for our age group. So one of the things that I've, found is that, and I think this happened during the pandemic, because for a while there, we couldn't go to the gym anymore. And so I started, walking with a weight vest over to the nearby track near my house and doing some, lunges with the weight vest on and some single-legged, and, squats and, some weighted jump squats, things like that. But for some reason, I think that wasn't enough weight bearing. So I think, I know what happened. I think that I wasn't going to the gym as much. So because I had been lifting quite heavily before that, and really believed in some heavy lifting too, and something called, anyway. So I think I got away from weight bearing, and I was still having a lot of success on the bike, and so I started thinking maybe I've been doing a little too much gym work and not enough, bike work. Because I do think that for the more intense kind of training we do, there's kind of a zero sum. Like if you push too hard in the gym, you're going to have to limit yourself a little bit on the bike and vice versa. That's why I like to have that kind of daily strength work that doesn't factor into how tired I am. It just gets done. And it doesn't really make me fatigued either, because it's just like, it's like eating dinner or breathing. It's just the thing you do every day. And so, but in any event, one of the things I found is that I did a DECA scan recently last year, and my bone density was really reduced. And so I think that's something that we have to recognize as cyclists. We're leaching calcium from our bones because we're not weight bearing. And if we don't supplement with weight bearing some other way, my understanding is it needs to be more ballistic to be effective. Running doesn't really do the trick, but like box jumps, jump roping, weighted jump squats, kind of dynamic work like that, plus heavier work like, trap bar deadlifts, things like that. That's something that us, older cyclists really need to be aware of, because otherwise, we're playing with osteoporosis.
Yeah, no, it's really, really good that you point that out. And for those, I started walking because I could feel my hips when I turned 60, whatever. So I started walking.
Yep.
But then I do hiking or rucking, where you're doing what you're saying, the weight vest, but you're doing it up hills and doing things like that. So I can feel it. So I'm much more aware of that. Just be doing more weight bearing stuff. Before we go, I was going to ask you this too. Just different metrics and things like that. Do you wear? We have so many, watches and power meters, and I just want to get your feeling on that.
See, I think that's why I would like maybe benefit from a coach, somebody who'd pay attention to that and and then factor it into training. I don't quite have the capacity or the patience for that, I think. I think up to like 4 years ago, I was a total Luddite. I purposely didn't want to have a power meter. I was against them. I didn't have anything. I didn't have any metrics. And then I think what happened is COVID hit. I realized, gonna have to do something, and I picked up Zwift. And so I got a smart trainer, and that was the first time I'd ever paid attention to power. But I think for me, I only care about power when it matters. So when I'm on Zwift, I care a lot about power a lot, because it is directly related to how you're doing in that, virtual world. When I'm on the road, I don't care about power. I care about speed, because like time trialing, doesn't matter how much power you put out. All that matters is how fast did you complete that 10 miles or that 20K or that 40K. So anyway, so for me, it's either knowing the course and knowing what you want your speed to be at a given time, or I do like looking at my heart rate and letting my heart rate dictate to me whether are you really working hard or not. So
have a very low heart rate. I'll just let everyone know that. So what you are time trialing at, and me too to a certain extent, but you even more. What you time trial at is what other people zone to. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I time trial, like on a good time trial, I probably am sitting right at about 140 beats average, and I haven't seen 160 beats max for a long time. But I don't necessarily think that's. I mean, to me, like when I think, the bell may toll for me on a competitive kind of career, it might be that my heart just starts, I might develop, AFib, or maybe my max heart rate or my time trialing heart rate starts to decrease even more, to the point where, kind of power output really gets compromised. So I don't know. That's kind of, I feel like I worry that that's kind of a canary in a coal mine kind of sign, like that your heart rate decreasing over the years might be not such a great sign. I mean, you might want to ascribe to it the notion that, hey, my heart must really be working well if it only has to beat that many times. But
your stroke volume, I mean, how much your blood pumps out. I mean, the strength and the efficiency of your heart has to be.
That's what you hope. But at the same time, like you got to think that a low heart rate can be a little bit hamstringing to it eventually. So
yeah. We need oxygen. We need it, right? Especially when you're time trialing. Yeah. That's the fuel. All right. Anything else? Anything last?
Well, so we talked. I mean, I've been riding now for 22 years, and I would say the first 10, I was a real idiot about a lot of things, and it was truly trial and error. And so a lot of the things that have been more successful for me in the last 12 years really came because I tried and failed in so many ways. And then there's always new things to try. Like my good friend Tim Mulrooney, we were just talking the other day about the fact that I'm not mindful when I time trial about my breathing, and he's really trying to argue with me. And he said this in the past too, that the more mindful and rhythmic you can be with your breathing, the more you can get out of your cardiovascular system. So I'm like, because I think that that's something that I'm really poor at, and that he's really focused on. So it's just something, it's something I want to.
No, there's a whole bunch of classes on breathing and breath and all the, the positive effects of it. Maybe I got to look into that for time trialing.
That's my next little challenge to myself.
What sounds like you're very deliberate, very conscious and intentional in the way that you live your life. Not only just to be a great cyclist, but as we talk about just being a healthy human being, making as good a choices as you can each and every day.
Yeah, and that's somewhat driven by a lack of longevity on my dad's side, and I think that there's some sense that, cleaner, healthier living might have, impacted the disease progression for him. So
Did your dad pass? Did he
yeah,
pass at a younger age?
yeah, he got dementia at a very young age. But there's, I've had the case made to me by his doctors at the Mayo Clinic that, we might not, as, physiologically deal with fats as well, and so, a cleaner fat, less, fat free, not fat free or less fat diet might really benefit somebody like me. So again, it's like, it's kind of a competition, everything's competition. So I'm like, for me, like, just if you can cheat death that a few more years, it's just a difference. It's just a race. Life's just a race if you treat it that way.
Yeah, and I don't know how it's going to end. I always think I try to keep it simple. I want to do more good things than bad things, right? Because I'm not perfect, and neither are you.
Oh yeah, not even remotely.
I just want to be conscious, and when I see things like maybe I could cut that out, maybe I shouldn't do that, maybe I should do some extra push-ups, and then I slowly just adapt them into a routine that I think I can sustain if I get to 70, right? That I could do this right now. I could do what I'm doing right now for a long time. I'm not doing anything super hard, but I'm just living something I can manage. It sounds like you're doing the same, just at a higher level.
Some of us are driven to intensity in ways that others aren't. You for whatever reason, you and I both like intense challenges, right? So, but I'm, if my body tells me, all right, you got to start playing more guitar or something, then I will.
Okay, let's end on that. What do you do when you're not? This would not be a good podcast if I didn't ask you, what does Dan Casper do when he's not cycling or working out and doing mindful things for his body and mind? What do you like to do in your off time? Do you read? Do you like music?
I had a period where I played guitar, wrote songs, and I sang them out, but that was back in my, 20s.
Nice.
So I think it is somewhat remarkable to me how much cycling has basically subsumed everything else, all the things I like to used to do. And it's made me arguably a little less balanced in my life, just because I enjoy it so much. And so instead of spending an hour, reading, now I'm, maybe kind of zoning out watching YouTube or something like that, or a lot of times I spend a lot of time watching, watching something while I do strength exercises. I mean, that's the one thing about having a shoulder injury. Oh my God. I mean, it's like 3 hours a day doing exercises if you're really, trying to get back fast. And it's amazing how long these really precise, meticulous exercises take if you're doing them all and doing them right.
The guitar would be a good thing then. I mean, I love music. I play drums, so I have drums in my garage. I bought an electronic one over COVID stuff. And I just find the 10 minutes, 20 minutes, or whatever, just putting on that headphones I've got and just playing music. I don't have any, I used to play in bands, but I don't want to do that. There's just something where I can't meditate, but that's as close as I get to a place where just try and play a perfect song as good as I can. That challenge, like, okay, that sounded good.
The other thing I do is I listen to a lot of podcasts. I think that kind of helps me feel like I'm connected to a thinking world, in a way that used to be achieved by reading, and I don't read as much. And right now my parents are quite old, and my mom, my mother, and my stepfather and I actually spend, a good chunk of, 2 to 3 months a year hanging with them. And so we read every night I'll read out loud to them for 2 hours, 3 hours. And that's something that I really value. But for some reason, it doesn't carry over to the way I live my life on my own. So
what do you read? What do you read to them? What kinds of things? I'm just curious.
They like history. So, right now they're saving, I think it's the book about Lincoln's cabinet, they will really have been chomping at the bit. They have a copy of it, but they're waiting for me to show up in early September, and we're going to read it then. So
what That is such a cool gift, Ann. That's really special. Those are the things in life that matter, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you for all of your time. I hope people that that know you, that watch this, get to know you a little bit better. Because it's kind of funny. We just know each other. It's the cycling community just know each other as people with helmets, and what your results are in races, and you have this image, that you walk around with. But we're real people. We have we have struggles, and everyone has their own lives to live, and how we make it through life is. For you, it seems to be very, like I said, intentional. You have a focus of what you want, and you try to do your best to live that with yourself and with your family. Can't ask for anything more than that. That's cool. Well, I'm glad we're waiting for like an emergency call there or something like that, but you told me that wouldn't happen. But so cool to visit you. Thank you for being a first responder, a fireman, all the things, all the people you've helped and saved in your career. That's got to be one of the most rewarding things in your life, I bet, when you look back and think, oh my God.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things I am proud of from work. So. And it's nice to have a job that you take pride in. That's a lucky thing.
Thank you for what you do. All right, my friend. Well, enjoy. I hope your comeback continues on this same path. That you ride fast, that you stay safe, and maybe we'll do this again in the future. But thanks again, Dan.
I look forward to seeing you again soon.